This is Hemant.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please support this show by going to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast. $5 a month. You will get ad-free episodes and exclusive bonus episodes. And we will love you forever.
I'm watching the dog like a ticking time bomb because she sees something and she's about to bark and ruin everything.
I know.
How are you doing, my friend?
I'm so tired, but I'm good. It was an exhausting week. The weather's getting better. Who knows?
The weather is gorgeous today, but all this week it sucked.
It did suck. But don't worry. I have stories that will make it suck even more.
Cool.
That's why
cool
we're
show we have here.
I know. We
this
put a
neat.
smile on your face. Don't worry. There are actually, I was looking through some of the stories for this week. There are some things that will actually make you smile amidst the horror in general. And this is, I'll start with this one out of Kansas where only good things happen.
Sure.
But here's the question to think about. Oh, yeah. Here's the thing to ask yourself. If you were a politician, like one of the easiest predictable questions you would ever get from anybody is like, how will you represent me in the legislature? Because you want my vote. You are, whether or not I voted for you, you are my representative. So what are you going to do to make sure my concerns are being heard? Like,
right.
You should have a stock answer ready to go for that sort of thing. So it turns out there is one. Well, there's many conservative Christian lawmakers, especially in Kansas, but one of them is State Senator Mark Steffen. He is a Republican from the city of Hutchinson. He took office in 2021. This is a guy who, when Ballotpedia asked people to fill out surveys when they're running for office, and one of the questions was like, what's one of your key messages to constituents? What are your top 3 messages? I'm quoting here verbatim. This is what he answered. God. We are a Christian nation, state, and counties. Our rule of law is built on Christian values. Our successes are a result of these realities.
What?
Which, one, doesn't answer the question of what are your goals.
His goals are God?
Yeah,
God, God's in the state, God's in the country, God's in the county, God's in the town. End of statement?
That's his goal.
That's not a goal, though. That's
Didn't
just
quite
a
connect the dots there.
statement of...
Yeah. But that's who we're talking about here. A guy who can't answer questions.
That's politics.
Doesn't care about anyone who doesn't agree with him.
That is evident.
And can't write sentences.
I just think it's so funny. Like, things like that are such a slam dunk issue because even if, like, you don't give a shit about any of this, which Republicans do not...
Yeah.
I want to make sure no child goes hungry in
it would
this
be so
state.
easy to BS
I want to
your way
make sure
through that
everybody
answer.
has access to whatever. Like, these aren't, like,
Even
politics isn't as hard as they think it is.
Even if you're a Republican, you could be like, well, I want to protect kids.
Yeah.
That includes, like, whatever, the unborn. I want to protect kids by arming them all in their school. Like,
well, sure, they want to protect kids against trans apparent monsters that are lurking around every corner in these people's minds.
My point is, you could
truly,
hide your views on that by still saying, I'm here for the kids. Like, that would be a good answer. Anyway, he didn't give it.
We talk about unforced errors a lot, and this is one of them.
This is also a guy who referred to the Democratic governor of Kansas, Laura Kelly, as a, quote, atheist, because she took pandemic-related actions a couple years ago.
Is she an atheist?
Nope.
Oh.
She's a Catholic. And he also referred to church-state separation.
That's like the opposite thing.
Yep, as a liberal sham that has no basis under the law.
What is a liberal sham?
Church-state separation, the Constitution, things like that.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That's who we're working with here.
Sure.
But
so
he is an elected official. And like all elected officials, there are groups that might want to, because they have lobby days, they want to get their members of their group to the state capitol to meet with their elected officials. Because if nothing else, like, and I've done this, by the way, personally, I don't know if you have or not yet, but like there are times when if I was in Washington, D.C. for something, and let's say a group like the Secular Coalition for America said, we're organizing a lobby day, we want as many people here as possible, tell us you're coming. We'll make phone calls with your members of Congress, and we'll try to have meetings with them where we will make a case for maybe a certain bill that we care about. And if nothing else, this is what everyone does. Your members of Congress.
This sounds very fun. I want to do this.
It's not bad. I will
it's
tell
like
you.
Big Block of Cheese Day from West Wing.
One time, I don't remember that reference. Several years ago.
If Anna's listening to this, she's going to lose her mind. We love Big Block of
Excellent.
Cheese Day in this family.
Several years ago, I met to talk about like why I think why the U.S. Congress should not support the Boy Scouts of America at a time when they were alleged, harboring child predators and things like that. And also, it's a religious organization, and that was something we felt, it's a simple message. We're not asking for much here. So even if, at the time, I had a Republican congresswoman, fine. They arranged a meeting for me to meet in her office. Turned out she was actually there. Like, it wasn't a staffer. I got to meet with my congresswoman at the time.
Who was
I don't remember. It was a nobody.
Really impactful.
I met with her. I made my case with a couple other people who were part of my delegation there. And that's it. She listened. She took notes. She ended up doing absolutely nothing that I wanted. But the point is, she had to see me face to face. And that's what Congress people, politicians, that's what they do.
And now you have this precious memory of your entire life participating in the democratic process by speaking to someone.
So it turns out in Kansas, there's a group called Loud Light. And they're a group that basically works to help people from underrepresented populations build community power.
Okay.
Awesome, progressive sort of
Loud
organization.
Light sounded very Christian coded to me. Doesn't
No,
it? Doesn't
secular
it
organization. They're just here to help people who are typically marginalized. And one of the things they did is organize a lobby day in Kansas, in the state capitol. And some of their members met with this guy, Mark Steffen, who was the Republican I was mentioning earlier. And again, they all go into this knowing this guy does not agree with us on our politics, but we want him to know we are here, we vote, these are the issues we care about. You represent us too. And, they're not asking for anything hyper political here. They just want to make themselves known to him.
So they're not even going in with like a request. It's just get some FaceTime. This is who I am. This is what it means
if
to me.
If they had
to
a request,
Kansasian.
It was not like we want you to support abortion rights and he doesn't. It wasn't anything like that.
A good use of time.
They were going to go in there, just put a face to a name, make it really hard for him to say no to basic decency, right?
Sure.
So that's what they went in there to do. And again, even if you're a Republican meeting with progressives or vice versa, that's part of your job. You meet with them, or your staff meets with them and takes notes and says, well, thank you for coming in. I will relay this to the person who actually cast the votes. And that's it. That's all you can really expect.
Yeah.
So back in March, members of Loud Light met with Senator Mark Steffen, and they just wanted to say, like, look, you've said some things that are troubling to us because of, basically, they didn't say this, I'm saying it, because of your Christian nationalism.
Sure.
And we represent people who are not all like that.
Right.
Some of us are Christian, but one of the group members, her name is Rija Nazir, she's Muslim, and basically she wanted to know, does that matter to you? Like, how do you make your decisions when you say on one hand, you say you only care about like Christianity and your version of the Bible,
which excludes a lot of people necessarily, which makes you a bad representative,
right? And they were like, "Look, what are you going to do to make sure our views and our voices, especially if we're not Christian, are going to be considered whenever you're making a vote?" Which again, to me, sounds like a pretty layup sort of question right there. You better have an answer to that one. I'm going to play you about a minute clip of their recording. They recorded this meeting with him. I'm just going to play you a short thing of it. You're going to hear two voices. One is Mark Steffen, the state senator from Kansas.
How old is this guy? Like, can you give me a decade? 30s? Okay.
And you're going to hear from Rija Nazir, who is the Muslim woman who is part of Loud Light.
Oh, boy.
And basically, she's saying, like, look, I'm Muslim. Other people are Muslim. What are you going to do about it?
I'm nervous.
And what I want you to really listen to is how he responds to her question. So here is the clip where he says, it really comes down to what I think the majority wants me to do. That's the first thing he's going to say.
Hear her or just
you
him?
will hear him first, then her.
Okay.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
To some degree it is, but it ultimately comes down to my belief on what the majority thinks.
Right.
Yeah.
And you said that you do legislate from a more biblical background. How do you kind of factor that in sometimes and sometimes don't? Because obviously not everybody does come from that background. I know I'm a Muslim woman, and there are people who are atheists. So what would you say to those people who are kind of against a more biblical approach to certain laws? Like, how would you justify that?
Or more liberal Christians too, who aren't necessarily your branches. So.
Well, I'd be happy to try to convert you.
Yeah.
to talk to you about why I feel.
So, for example, like Risha's Muslim.
I'll stop there.
Whoa.
Did you hear what he said there?
I'll convert you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to try and convert you. That was his response.
That is fucking sinister. I love that they always try to quote 1984 as if they are not exactly like what they are afraid of. There's fucking
like if I'm in office and a group of very
how wildly inappropriate.
If MAGA people came into my office and they were like, "What are you going to do to make sure we are heard?" And it's like, "Look, I have channels open where you can communicate your thoughts with me. I'm going to do what I feel is in the best interest of my constituents." There's so many ways you could answer this question. And instead of saying, like, I don't disrespect people who don't share my faith, I do want to listen to you. He's like, well, I can try and convert you. If that was a joke, I don't know what the punchline is. It's just a completely inappropriate thing for an elected official to say, completely dismissive of the valid point she was raising. And basically he made it clear, I don't give a damn what my non-Christian constituents think because I don't think you should have any say in the government anyway.
Isn't it wild that, like, I always like to parse this back to, like, you and I work with teens and children and things like that. Could you imagine if one of us, not even as a representative, but as a just, like, teacher or coach of young people, if they said, hey, I have questions about religion, and we said immediately, why don't I convert you to the thing I believe in? Because it's better.
As a person, I couldn't do that.
I just cannot imagine how anybody besides a white nationalist who is so...
A Christian nationalist.
Yeah, Christian white nationalist.
I can make extensions from there, but I'm just working off of the Christian nationalist side of things.
I mean...
By the way, my favorite part of this
fucking breaks my
afterwards,
heart.
a reporter for the Kansas Reflector newspaper basically called him up and they're like, hey, what do you have to say about this comment you made here about trying to convert
good
these
one, right?
people? He said, I'm quoting here, that is not true. That is a false statement, 100%. That's all I got to say. Buddy, you were recorded saying it. We have the audio.
And then, wait. Then what did the reporter say to him?
The reporter said it's on audio. Like they
didn't hold him to anything, or they just said him say,
I think they
JK.
just said, like, look, we know you said this. I mean, we have the recording of it. Why? What did you say here? That's not what I said. Like, I don't know where you go from there.
No follow-up questions, journalists?
I don't know what the journalist tried to do, but he didn't respond beyond that. I'll be honest, none of that shocked me or surprised me. It's a little jarring to hear it.
It is jarring, is correct.
But it doesn't surprise me because that is what Christian nationalists do. They think laws ought to be written by conservative Christians for a government that honors their faith and none of the other ones. They want to live in a theocracy, but they pretend they're living in a democracy. They claim they love the Constitution. They haven't read the First Amendment. I will say Loud Light has sent a letter to the Kansas Senate president urging him to condemn Stefan's remarks. He's not gonna. Ty Masterson is a Republican. He's not gonna say anything. But I did check, like, now that this article is out and we have the recording, has Mark Stefan said anything in response to any of this? And he did post on Facebook something about it. He said, it seems that the liberals and the liberal media are attacking me for my Christian faith.
Yeah.
I want to provide...
He got it.
Yeah.
No, he got it. He
and
nailed
then he
it.
added, I want to provide clarification via the statement below.
Sure.
His clarification, I'm quoting here.
Can't anyone take a joke anymore?
Our society has devolved into a terrible emptiness. We have made ourselves our God, and it doesn't work. I care about you, and God loves you. It's not complicated. Our happiness, our contentment, our eternal life is through Christ our Savior. Everyone is welcome. That didn't...
Those are all
Remember that
words.
survey where he's like, what's your goal? And he's like, God. And you're like, that's not the answer to the question. Same thing here. What's your statement in response to the audio that has you saying the thing you said you did, like you claimed you didn't say? And he's like, we all are horrible sinners. Like, that doesn't answer the question.
Okay,
buddy.
I have a theory. He is
No one's
a
attacking him.
chatbot. Who only is loaded with, like, Republican and white
Talking
nationalist
points.
talking
Yeah.
points.
They're
and
not
Christian
attacking him. They are quoting him. That's the difference.
I
Throwing
do
more
love
Jesus at
those
this
kinds
problem.
of things of, like, I mean, it's such an unserious business that we're in at this point for them, for just, like, a human being who, like, in the year of our Lord 2023, like, you have to assume everything is being recorded all the time, especially when you know it's being recorded.
Yeah,
And to
it's
say
not like
something
this was a
is
hidden thing.
Truly.
I can't imagine it was. And even if it was, it's a constituent meeting with a representative. That's not a private meeting right there. They're
Yes.
not paying for his kid's tuition.
And to think that he has like the sensibility of a 6-year-old to be like, well, if I keep saying no, if I keep holding my hands over my ears and saying like
Yeah.
they can't. This is what feels like.
He's never going to face any punishment because conservative Christians run the Kansas legislature, because no one at his church will care. No one in their religious circles will ever hold them accountable for it.
Do you think that we're in the middle? I've been listening to a lot of Planet Money lately. Are we in the middle of like a religious / conservative bubble? Like a housing bubble that's going to burst? Like
I would love to believe that. I would love to believe the demographic shifts away from organized religion will finally break our way, and those people will finally lose their power. I've been wishing for that for more than 20 years. I've never seen the bubble burst.
No. And I don't think it's a matter of whether or not it bursts, but we are seeing, in the midterm election, we're seeing that sort of lack of red, the pendulum swinging back Republican. Like they didn't do that well in the midterms, especially for what they could have done. And there's a Democrat in office. That means their party is always going to get fucked in the midterms, but they barely lost the Congress. It just feels like to me that it is like less and less. It's like Jenga, right? It's like less and less tenable the more they like spread themselves out. I just don't. But
you're making the assumption.
Sustainable.
You're making the assumption that the system is fair, and when you have gerrymandering, when you have a Senate that benefits small rural states, like it doesn't matter if the demographic shifts are in our direction because the system in place benefits them. Then Supreme Court's on their side already. So until those systemic things change, it doesn't matter what the demographic changes are doing.
Do you think there is any way that like the sort of redlining of it all is going to circle back all the way around to be like damaging for Republicans?
It could be. It is in Illinois. We gerrymander the hell out of our state, and Republicans have nothing. They have very little representation, which is wonderful because their complaint is, well, we shouldn't have this gerrymandering like this.
What?
It's like, oh, really? And should that be a national thing, by the way? It's like, then they shut up. Because even if it hurts them in one state, and maybe New York with its new liberal court, and maybe in Wisconsin in the future, there are plenty of states where it's horribly gerrymandered and no one's doing anything about it. So is it going to come back and bite them in the ass later on? No, because, again, they have control in too many places and they like not playing by the rules.
I guess
what we need to do is break up California into like 7 states.
Oh, my God, that would be so good. Why do we need 2 Virginias, gang? Why do we need 2 Dakotas? What I was going to say is I'm genuinely thinking of as just a geographical thing of like people. When redlining happened, we still see those divisions in, say, Chicago today, right? Like where if you don't know what redlining is, essentially the government decided this is where poor black people are and we don't give a fuck about them and that's where they get to live and we're just going to pretend they don't exist. I feel like everybody I know who's my age is like fucking broke. And so everybody is instead of like moving into the like nicer things, everybody is just taking what's it called when rich people take over poor people's shit?
Capitalism?
Yeah, actually, to be fair. No, there's a word. Somebody will text it to me. I'm just saying like...
Eminent domain? I'm not sure what you're going for.
No, the thing where I moved to Uptown because there's a bunch of new condos up there and...
White flight?
Not white flight. There's a different name.
There's so many ways to describe rich people
really
taking over
annoying.
new areas.
Anyway, I'm just saying that like our generation is not as wealthy as the one before us. Therefore, are those red line districts going to be able to fill up with the same rich white people? I guess is kind of my question.
I have no idea where we're going with it.
I just think there's a demographic
but
shift
it's
that people
like
aren't as wealthy.
Liberals are moving to Montana.
No. But I feel like you're not listening to me because
I don't think I get it.
What I am saying is if the way that people our age have not gotten conservative as we get older because we're not gaining that wealth the way our parents' generation did, I'm wondering if that is going to play out in where people live and therefore sort of fuck up what we traditionally know as a rich neighborhood versus poor neighborhood, because rich neighborhoods are not as desirable for like liberal-minded young people who don't want to be like ostentatious about money. Anyway, I'm curious if there's ever going to be sort of a circle back on that. I don't know. I thought it made sense and was an
Revenge
interesting
sounds
thought.
like a wonderful idea.
Do you feel like you did not take me seriously?
I don't think I understand the question.
Okay,
I'll
go
move on. Here's another case of someone calling out a Republican, but this one has kind of a better middle ending. Okay, here's the story. Texas, you might know, is currently on just binge passing tons of laws promoting Christian nationalism. One of them is a bill.
Gentrification.
Gotcha. One of them is a bill that would post the 10 Commandments, King James Version, in all public school classrooms, because that's what their schools need right now. Uvalde will love it. So they want to put the 10 Commandments in every classroom. That has already passed the state Senate. It's currently being debated in the state House, and that's where we were at this week. And here's what happened. There was a meeting, a discussion in the Public Education Committee, and one of the bill's sponsors had to basically go up and make her case for why this ought to be passed. And again, Republicans have complete domination of the state House. They can pass this thing no matter who stops them. No one's going to stop them. So here's the question to think about. Let's say you are a Democrat in the Texas legislature. You know this is a horrible bill. You know this doesn't solve anything. You know this is arguably illegal.
Right.
What can you do with the power you barely have? And
Filibuster?
you know, you won't matter. You don't have the power to put a stop to this. Sure. Filibustering won't work in this case. But what you can do is at least try to use the platform you have by the nature of being an elected official and just try to point out the hypocrisies and point out the problems with the bill in the hopes that more people hear it. It may not stop the train from moving, but at least it'll get some people paying a little more attention, maybe. And that is what happened this week. Listen, I wanted to play you the clip of this. The whole exchange was like 15 minutes long, and there were too many highlights that I was just like, you know what? I won't play the entire thing. Okay. But the person defending the 10 Commandments bill, her name is Representative Candy Noble. She sponsored the House version of the same bill.
Candy Noble?
You heard me right. And the person asking questions to her during this House committee meeting is Democratic State Representative James Tallarico. And so I'm going to read you some of the things he brought up here, because basically the floor is his. He can ask questions about the bill. And just to run through some of the things we've already discussed, because I think we talked about this particular bill a few weeks ago. But again, the same people who don't want high schoolers learning about sex, systemic racism, LGBTQ, anything, they all say, like, this is about parents' rights. They all say this is, we don't think these issues belong in a public school classroom. Focus on like math and reading and stuff like that.
Just really quick, how are their math scores across the board in this
Texas?
State? Yeah.
Not great.
Huh.
And so
so that's not
But
working.
for some reason, they have very specific things they want kindergartners to know about, like adultery. I don't know. So that the bill doesn't make sense on that end. It also wouldn't solve anything. No potential school shooter has ever plotted out a path of destruction and then reconsidered after realizing the 10 Commandments says, oh, thou shalt not kill, right? Like if you need a sign to remind you not to murder people, you got bigger issues. Now, it'd be great if they could see a mental health professional, but the same Texas lawmakers, as we've discussed, are currently passing a bill to allow schools to replace mental health professionals, social workers, counselors with Christian chaplains. So they don't care about mental health in Texas. And, of course, as George Carlin said many years ago, like several of the commandments are just flat out useless.
I truly was going to bring up George Carlin because it's and because the
you don't need the commandments.
Well, and the other flip side of like, okay, what it's like most of them are don't be an asshole and then like don't murder or whatever.
Right.
I would love to like
we can put up a list of two things, right?
Can we just put up a list that we can all kind of sit and talk about? Like, don't
Let's make a new list.
Don't rape people. Yeah. Don't, I don't know, force people off their native land so you can capitalism on it.
Yes.
Like, just things that I think don't shoot
If you
people
were-
in a school.
If you were looking for a better list, there's a very great way of any 10 things you come up with are going to be better than pretty much everything in the commandments. But again, with the commandments and the version they're using, and they have the text of the commandments in the bill, this is the version that has to go up. We're talking about commandments that say don't believe in false gods, don't make graven images, don't take God's name in vain. You got to keep the Sabbath day holy. Like those things
As
are
if those
Christian
are
specific.
lessons that 6-year-olds need to
Yeah,
learn.
exactly.
Honor
So,
the Sabbath day and keep it holy, Timmy.
these are
no
general.
Bluey today.
These are general reasons the 10 Commandments are bad.
Yeah.
But again, this bill says we got to put them in the classroom. So some of the things that Tallarico,
Bad. I would say ineffective.
ineffective, yes. So one of the things Tallarico started doing is pointing out, he started his line of questioning by noting the hypocrisy of it all. For example, he's like, so one of these commandments, I'm paraphrasing here. One of these commandments is remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Quote, are you aware the legislature is scheduled to meet this Saturday? She says, I am aware of that. So that would be violating the 10 Commandments. I contend that that is a hard... you're right, she says.
You're right? I've never heard a Republican say you're right.
He continues, thou shalt not kill. Are you aware the legislature has refused to outlaw the death penalty?
Whoo!
This goes on.
And? What'd she say?
She doesn't have a response. Her basic response is, I'm going to sidestep your question and say the reason we're proposing this set of commandments, like the KJV version, and this is important. She said, I'm quoting here, we are using the words that are on the monument outside the Texas State Capitol because it has been upheld by the Supreme Court. But we're talking about murder here, not justice, certainly not war. I don't know what she's getting at. But
What?
her argument is there is a monument outside the Texas State
wait,
Capitol.
No, I understand. She is differentiating between
The death
quote, unquote,
penalty
murder
and just murder.
and justice and killing in
Yes.
battle, as if that is
But her bigger
any
issue
less
is
murdering a person.
it doesn't matter what it says because the Supreme Court already said the monument outside the Capitol is legal. And she's wrong
Well, they
about
also
that.
said that abortion was legal, so
they
I'm
said
not
a lot of
sure
things.
if that is something we should.
Here's the thing
hang our hat on.
she got wrong, though, because quick history of 2005 for you.
Yeah, that's
the Supreme Court said that there is a monument outside the Texas State Capitol that just has the KJV version of the 10 Commandments. The Supreme Court said in a 5-4 vote that is legal. Why? Because it's not in isolation. They said it was part of a larger display that includes 17 monuments and 21 historical markers showcasing history and moral ideals. Justice Kennedy was the swing vote for that one and said 5-4. Okay, now, I don't necessarily agree that we're talking about history or moral ideals, but their argument was it's not like this monument is just sitting there by itself, which
Right.
would obviously be a promotion of Christianity. This is part of a larger display, and that's why we're saying it's okay.
Yeah.
By the way, the exact same day they ruled on that case, they ruled on a different standalone 10 Commandments monument in Kentucky, and again, Justice Kennedy said, you know what, that one is illegal
it's
it's
illegal.
by itself, and that's a promotion of the Christianity.
Yeah.
We can't have that. So her argument is, I'm using this version because the Supreme Court said it's legal.
But they didn't
they're not
judge
putting,
on the KJV version of the 10 Commandments.
No,
they were
they're
talking
saying
about the context of
the
it.
context. And in the bill, they're not saying put up a display of
Right.
morality and moral ideals in every classroom. They're saying, no, just put up the Christian one. So she has it completely backwards.
She really
There's-
does.
So she's wrong. So Tallarico goes on. He says, thou shalt not commit adultery, basically saying that's another one of the commandments. He didn't say this, but he was alluding to the fact that some of their colleagues in the Texas government have been in the news because they've had extramarital affairs. So it's clear they don't care about adultery.
And again, is that a thing we need to teach children, that you shouldn't cheat on your spouse? I feel like the implications of what adultery
yeah.
is so overreaching for
He-
children.
He will get back to the question of what
good.
to teach children. But then he said, by the way, the second commandment is thou shalt not make to thyself any graven image, no idolatry. And then he said, and I'm quoting, the idea that some people would try to make an object, maybe 2 tablets to worship, rather than worshiping the God behind those 2 tablets. Are you worried this bill is idolatrous? She said, I do not. Why not? He asked. And then she went off on a tangent and said something else. She said, I contend that this is absolutely needed, and I get where you're going with that particular commandment, but it's there and it's historical and it's foundational. And then
it's foundational.
and then he asked, would you be open to an amendment to the bill saying that if a member of the legislature violates these commandments, that we can no longer mandate public school teachers put it in their classrooms? And she said, it is my intention to keep this bill clean, like as it is in the law that was passed in the Senate. So basically, he noted 4 commandments regularly broken by Republican members of his state government, and she had no good response to any of that. So that's part 1. He notes the hypocrisy of all their colleagues. Then he pointed out the fact that they mentioned the Bremerton v. Kennedy case in the Supreme Court where the coach wanted to pray on the football field. And his whole thing is that was legal, the Supreme Court said, because it's his personal faith, a personal expression of his faith. Your bill, I'm quoting here, your bill doesn't do that, though. It mandates that every single teacher put the 10 commandments in their classroom. Is there a difference between prohibiting an individual school employee or teacher from practicing or expressing their faith versus the state now telling them what has to be expressed in their classroom? And she had no response.
She
that.
literally had no response, or
she said some gibberish.
Rambled.
Yep. He also said, would you be open to an amendment that would allow schools to post the 5 precepts of Taoism? And she said, no, that's not in our bill, basically.
Oh, it's not.
He said, well, there are other documents that have influenced the Constitution, Code of Hammurabi, the Magna Carta. Can teachers post that instead of the 10 Commandments? She said, quote, I am today, that's not my bill. Has no answer to that one. This goes on for a little while.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes.
Was it Texas that had the you have to post in God we trust if someone gives it to you? Is that the same?
Same Texas.
Is it the same person heading those things up? Those 2 bills?
Like, I don't know if the sponsors are the exact same, but the same people are voting for them.
Okay. So, wait, I just want to be very clear about this.
They have enough
law
conservative.
Still stands.
Yeah, there are enough
So
conservative
they are
Christians to pass all these and sponsor all
that's
these
not what
different
I'm
bills.
asking.
But yes,
I am saying that they already have a bill passed
Yes,
that
to put
you
up
have to
in
put
God
in
we
God we
trust.
trust in your school if somebody gives it to you. Is that
correct.
the thing? Okay.
Anyone can donate as long as it fits their parameters. Then it's got to go up.
And so so this woman, Candy was from Texas.
Candy Noble, yep, she's the
Candy's from
Republican
Kansas. Oh, she is,
sponsor
okay.
of this bill.
Candy sees this and is like, not enough.
Right.
We need more specificity.
Yep.
More language, bigger signage.
And in every classroom, not
in
just
every classroom,
once
not
in the school.
Okay. This woman is out of her entire fucking mind.
Yes.
Doesn't Texas's grid just not work? Didn't people
Doesn't matter anymore.
freeze to death in their homes in Texas?
Sorry,
not
you're talking
about a year ago?
about real life problems. They do not deal with those in Texas. Doesn't matter. Will the Texas grid go down again this summer? Yes.
What about the motherfuckers who are running around on horses and whipping immigrants or whatever? Is this not something that we have to be concerned about?
Don't care. Got to put God in the classroom.
I hate this.
Mhm.
I hate
So
these
then-
people.
Then Talarico is still at it. He's still
good for
doing
you,
this. Good for
Talarico.
him. And he says, and this is the point, I want to quote this for you. Every time on this committee that we try to teach students values like empathy or kindness, we are told we can't because that's the parents' role. Every time on this committee that we try to teach basic sex education to keep our kids safe, we're told that's the parents' role. But now you're putting religious commandments, literal commandments, in our classrooms and you're saying that's the state's role. Why is that not the parents' role? And I got to tell you, if I played this clip for you, there is a long, awkward pause before she talks. And then she says, that's really an interesting rabbit trail you've gone on
not the
with that.
expression.
That's not the
It's
expression.
famously rabbit
Yeah,
hole.
Yeah.
It's fucking.
But she doesn't answer his question, basically. He said, would you be comfortable with adding language to receive parental consent from all the parents of students in the classroom before putting it up?
Oh,
No.
no?
No.
Why not?
He
I thought
said
parental rights.
they don't
Parental
care about
rights
it
is what I
as
said.
long as Christians want it. So it's not really about any of the stuff Republicans claim to care about. But then, you know what she did say?
They're just so
Why this is
fucking
important?
unserious. This is what makes me fucking crazy about this. They're all so unserious about the
About the most important job.
Yes, about the role of running a country, and all they're using this power to do is grandstand bullshit. And I don't.
It's like when Rand Paul ran for president. It's like, what do you want to do if you become president? I want to basically destroy the government. buddy, you're running to be the leader of the government.
Was he named after Ayn Rand?
I'm sure he
I'm
thinks
gonna
he
look that
was.
up. I bet that's
But
I bet he gave
one
himself
of the
a
things,
nickname.
yeah.
Motherfucker.
Noble also said this in defense of why she finally answered why she thinks the bill is a good idea. Instead of just saying, well, this is the bill. She said, listen to this. If you're a teacher, listen to this. I know that our teachers are more and more and more having to fight for classroom management over the behavior of students.
This is the woman saying
This is the woman saying this.
who wants the 10 Commandments in a classroom.
I think these commandments would help with that classroom management need.
You fucking loopy lady.
And I wish she had done a follow-up at that point just to be like, and how would this help with the classroom management?
I just want to know how idolatry is going to make my 6-year-old sit in their fucking chairs. Tell me that.
Yeah, no, exact. I have been in
What
a
the
classroom
fuck is she
where
even going
kids
on
have been
about?
rowdy. Like, listen, if kids listened to the shit that was written on signs in the classroom, everything would be glorious. They have never
Everybody
done
would
that.
reach for the stars. Everybody wouldn't.
Yeah, that kids do not care what the signs on your wall says. It does color them a little bit. It adds some spice, some color
What's the one
into
that
the room.
they used to put up next to the clock and it says time will pass, will you?
And the answer is they won't.
They will not.
But
Have
basically-
you seen Abbott Elementary
No.
when she tells the guy he needs to put posters up in his classroom, so he just goes to like Office Max and gets those motivational posters for his kindergartners.
Nice.
It's just outstanding.
Love it.
It's a great show.
And the whole exchange, 15 minutes long, basically, like, Noble showed over and over, she's got nothing. She has
No.
no good arguments for wanting this up there.
Do you know anything about this woman aside from this terrible opinion that she has and being a monster?
She is one of a number of conservative Christians in the Texas legislature. They kind of divvy up which horrible thing they're going to do in the name of Jesus. This was hers.
Sure. Oh, good.
This is her thing.
Just imagine like the effort and time and expense it takes to run for local office, state office, whatever. And literally she gets there and the best idea she comes up with is we should put laminated pieces of paper in everybody's classroom all across this magical state of ours.
They will love it when they're being shot at
lights
by...
on fire from climate change and then freezes over again.
Yes. And then Tallarico ended his comments politely. He was way too polite for my taste, but that's why he's in elected office
gotta.
and none of us are. He said this, I say this, I'm quoting, and I say this to you as a fellow Christian representative. I know you're a devout Christian and so am I. This bill to me is not only unconstitutional, it is not only un-American, I think it is also deeply un-Christian.
Yeah.
And he added, a religion, listen to this one, a religion that has to force people to put up a poster to prove its legitimacy is a dead religion. And it's not one that I want to be a part of. It's not one that I think I am a part of. My concern is instead of bringing a bill that will feed the hungry, clothe the naked, heal the sick, we are instead mandating that people put up a poster. And we both follow a teacher, a rabbi, who said, don't let the law get in the way of loving your neighbor. Loving your neighbor is the most important law. I would submit to you that our neighbor also includes the Hindu student who sits in a classroom, the Buddhist student who sits in a classroom, and an atheist student who sits in a classroom. And my question to you is, does this bill truly love those students? And do you know what Candy Noble said to that? I'm going to go in a different direction that I think you're trying to lead me, ... It doesn't matter.
Wait, what did she end up saying?
Oh, a bunch
Anything-
of bullshit that didn't address it. She did say, I
Wow.
think this bill actually rights a wrong that was done years ago based on a failed decision by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said you can't put 10 commandments in classrooms in
But she
1980.
just said she's doing this because the Supreme Court is on her side.
I'm sure, but yeah.
I feel like she doesn't understand
here's
how
the
laws
thing.
do.
I agree with Tallarico, by the way, that he said this also, that this sort of bill gives Christians a bad name, which is offensive to him as a Christian. Because he's right. When Christianity becomes synonymous with conservative Christianity or Christian nationalism, that's a branding problem for the entire faith. And he's upset that his colleagues aren't just ruining public education. They're dragging his religion through the mud. Like this bill, the 10 Commandments, they're not going to lead kids to Christianity. No. It's going to do our job and lead people away from organized religion. But this is the thing. this bill will probably pass. It will be signed by the governor. It'll become a law. Teachers will have to do this starting next school year. And there's really nothing Democrats can do to put a stop to that other than file a lawsuit. And who knows what the Supreme Court would do in a case like this, because they'll find a reason to justify it. But I will give him credit for this. Given the lack of power that he has to stop it, I think it is so important that he used his voice to call out the bullshit behind this whole bill using the platform that he has. I think when I looked, he started tweeting various parts of everything we've just talked about, clips from that exchange. He did it. He was putting those things out there in a series of tweets. And last I checked, there were like at least 1,000 retweets of each of those things. Like it was going, I mean, as viral as many things could go, but it was getting out there in a way that most committee meeting hearings will never get to. And that's the power you have as a Democratic lawmaker.
Yeah.
Even if you see this bullshit, it is your job to amplify the fact that it's bullshit. We just saw in Nebraska our deep admiration to someone like Megan Hunt, who's a state senator there, Michaela Cavanaugh there. They managed to use their power to filibuster in a way that prevented an anti-abortion bill from getting through. I think they're still working on an anti-trans bill, trying to put a stop to it from going through, because that's all they can do, because their ideology isn't in the majority there. So kudos to Tallarico in Texas for what he did. Honestly, if the Republican majority was capable of being honest with themselves, they would acknowledge pretty much everything he said.
Right.
But again, their easiest game plan here is to just let him talk and then ignore him, because they're just power hungry.
And I hope there's
they're
no
not gonna
sticking power of this, which we're going to do our best to make sure that sticks somewhat.
Right.
That sucks.
Good times. Here's a disturbing story. I'm going to preface
We
this
just did a
with
disturbing
that wasn't
story.
disturbing. This is disturbing. Listen, all the trigger warnings on this one, because it involves a child and it's abuse and it's bad. Skip ahead to the next story if you need. But here's the headline: a Christian missionary is going to be going to jail. Good, because he was found guilty of sexually abusing a 4-year-old family member. And how do we know? Why was he found guilty? Because they had a smoking gun. Do you know what the smoking gun was? The 4-year-old had gonorrhea.
Oh, God.
And they discovered that shortly after this missionary tested positive for gonorrhea. And I'll give you details about the story, but holy crap, that's the headline. Yeah.
Oh, God.
4
years
4.
old.
And here's the backstory here. This guy is 30-year-old Jordan Webb. He
30,
could
30?
30. Yep, 30. He could spend the next 32 years behind bars. His sentencing is next month. But basically, a year ago, he was arrested by the Webster County Sheriff's Office in Iowa after an investigation spurred by health concerns involving a juvenile led to them investigating this guy.
Toddler.
He was basically in a house run by Harvest Bible Church, which is an independent fundamentalist Baptist church. That's a church that is also runs a church-run college. He lives there as well. And the reason he was there, the reason he has this association with the church, is because for the past few years, prior to last year, he and his wife were living in St. Lucia, the Caribbean island. He worked there with his wife as a missionary for a few years. They had just returned back from the island when he was arrested. And here's the thing. They've discovered, like, once they found out that this 4-year-old was infected, they were like, well, how on earth could she have gotten infected? Where was she? Who was she with? Is there any reason to think we might know who she was with? And basically, that trail led them to this guy.
This is when everyone's crossing their fingers that it's some stranger that came through town.
Yeah, let that horrible
yeah.
scenario be the best case scenario, but
Yeah.
it's not. It went to this guy, and they tested him, and it turned out he had the disease as well. And here's the thing. It's a sexually transmitted disease.
So they found it in her first.
They found it in her first. And
circled
then
back to
everyone
him.
is like, why does a 4-year-old have this sexually transmitted
I
disease?
can't even believe they caught. Like, how would you even know to test it for that?
She was showing symptoms. And so they're like, we need to look into this. And they found this guy, and they tested him. They're like, oh, you have it too. And here's the thing. He tried explaining all this away.
What'd he say?
And his lawyer then in court tried explaining this all away first. he admitted he had been unfaithful. And I think he did that because, one, it's a sin, and that means it's something that can be forgiven.
Wait.
Yeah. He's like...
he's starting with, I was unfaithful.
He's starting with that. That's his
he's
opening
married
move.
to somebody else?
The wife who was on the island with him as a missionary.
So he thinks, I want to be clear, his gravest sin in his eyes is that he
I think
that
this
he
is
was
his
unfaithful.
excuse. This is his excuse for why he has gonorrhea. He's like, I cheated. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
But then,
I see.
once they put two and two together, it's like, well, you have a thing and this child has a thing. Like, unfaithfulness is not the state's concern here, right?
It's not illegal to
So,
cheat.
but then get this. His lawyer in court says, it's a coincidence that this happened. How could it? Because they were together on the island. I don't know their relationship. I couldn't get that detail, and obviously her identity is protected.
Of course.
So I don't know if like uncle,
if
niece,
she's local
what's
there,
they're
or-
family
oh, you
members.
said
I
the
know
family.
that, but I don't know specifically how are they related. But they were together. No one's denying that. But the lawyer said, well, maybe they used the same towel. Maybe they went swimming together. Maybe he was cleaning up after she used the toilet. And then the prosecution had witnesses that were like, that's almost certainly not how this spreads because, and they had a little bit of wiggle room there. They're like, look, it's a sexually transmitted disease.
Yeah.
There are other ways it could spread, but those are rare. And the odds of like, you got it from using the same towel, no, that's not how it works. And the jury agreed,
Yeah.
no, there's only one way this could have happened. There was enough evidence saying, no, he gave it to her.
What was the case here or in San Lucia?
I mean, they were there, but this case took place in Iowa.
Oh, okay.
And the jury this week said, no, we're not buying whatever his defense
Oh, my
is. And they
God.
convicted him. 2.5 hours of deliberation. Like
Oh,
nothing. It was
Jesus.
fast. And their
That's
verdict...
how long it takes them to call roll.
I know.
They like got sandwiches. They're like, let's just get one more lunch out of this.
Last Friday, they announced the verdict. He was found guilty, Webb, of sexual abuse with someone under 12. That was one charge. Incest, another charge. And child endangerment. All three of those were guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. He is not eligible for bond. June 5th is his sentencing date. And I want to, besides all of that horrifying stuff, here's another nugget that you should know. According to the Des Moines Register, Harvest Baptist Church, the church that housed him and sent him to St. Lucia, they not only helped him pay his legal expenses during this whole ordeal before the verdict, Pastor Marvin Smith IV, the guy who runs the church, he wrote a letter to the judge calling for Webb's pre-trial release so he could just, why are you keeping this guy locked up? And he was allowed to go free on a $75,000 bond. He was allowed to be free before the trial began.
He's certainly not a danger to, I don't know, the most vulnerable population,
Right?
toddlers.
I did find, by the way, this is not on the church's YouTube channel. I found a separate YouTube thing that shows basically a promotional video urging people to donate money to the church so they can convert people in St. Lucia. And who are the stars of this like 3-minute promotional video? Jordan and his wife talking about how wonderful everything is.
Fuck.
Wait, there's another thing to this story. The same church has been in the news before in 2020. Why? Because they were accused of harboring a convicted sex offender.
Ooh,
Yep,
boy.
because a few years ago-
Second verse, same as the first. A little bit louder and a little bit worse.
Another pastor who was part of another independent fundamentalist Baptist church in Maryland and had been convicted of 4th-degree sexual offense and 2nd-degree assault. He had moved to Iowa, and they took him in at this church,
Sure.
and there's video of him singing in the choir with a couple other dudes. Like, just let him walk in. I mean, again, forgiveness is one thing. This guy's a convicted sex offender. They're like, come on right in, we got kids here.
It really, they show how much, they show their deep-seated hatred for women and for children in a million little ways. And this is one of them, that this story that they're allowing themselves to be told, this church, is this, oh, we're saving this fallen guy and everyone deserves God's forgiveness and whatever.
I looked for that, by the way. I did not find their justification for why they harbored this guy, but that is, I think you're
what
right.
else
That's
could
what
you,
they did.
What else could
probably.
you say? And not advocate for the child victims of this. They are doing everything they can to protect these predators. This is the Catholic Church all over again. This is, we see shit over and over, and it's so frequently in conservative circles because they're so fucking afraid to talk about sex that children don't understand what's going on. Parents are, adults are taking advantage of it. It's fucking disgusting. It really, really is appalling. I truly am at the point that, like, if you find anything salvageable in the GOP, then you need to do some long looks in the mirror and figure out what the fuck is wrong with you and why you hate poor people and women and minorities and queer people.
I was looking on the church's
babies.
social media sites to see, like, well, that conviction happened on Friday of last week of Jordan Webb. And I'm like, well, have you said anything? Has the church said anything publicly? Because, I mean, it's one thing to say, well, he's part of our church. We want to help him out. We don't think he's guilty of any of this. But now he is guilty. Now he is going to jail. Have they said anything? Because I could imagine them saying, we're going to make sure no predator is ever in our presence. We're going to make sure, here's how we're going to protect children in the future. They have said nothing as of this recording. Nothing.
And on top of that, huge misstep and huge, like, PR whiff. Where are the people in their church saying, hey, gang, this isn't cool. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to protect predators. Why are you making me party to this? Like, are none of the women or young people in that church saying, like, hey, guys, I know you're all really happy that Tommy the molester is here with us, but, like, he is not targeting you adult men. He is targeting children. So I'm not sure why y'all get to decide. Like, what is the thing about, like, it's two owls and they're like, aren't you afraid of, have you ever been afraid of a hawk? No, a hawk has never bothered me. I don't know what those sparrows are going on about. Like, it's really so neglectful.
Yeah, I mean, kids are in danger at this church, and they're doing nothing.
Like, textbook child endangerment. Like, it would be, if I wrote a textbook, child endangerment would be like, you bring a convicted sex offender into your social fold, even though there are children there. That's a bad thing.
I mean, is there any warning? I don't know. Do they tell these people who this new guy is? I doubt
Who
it.
cares? Who cares if they do? Like, listen, I want to be clear. I am all for benefit of the doubt and, not recuperation, but
rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation.
Yeah.
I am not a person who thinks you did one bad thing and you're fucked for the rest of your life. That's, again, want to be clear, the GOP. However, somebody who's convicted of attacking children, I'm just going to say it's not unchristian to keep him away from your children, I guess. If I knew a guy was convicted for kicking dogs, I would not introduce him to Dottie. She is too dumb to escape somebody like that. She would be kicked many times and then wag her tail. Because she's an idiot. However, I would never let that happen, Hemmett.
I know you wouldn't.
Thank you.
Hey, do you want to know what Dave Silverman is up to? Yeah, you do. Let me help you out here. The former president of American
Does he
Atheists.
listen? Do you know?
Oh, to this?
Yeah.
No, but he does see things I post.
Okay.
I know that.
I'm always wondering if people like that listen.
I'm going to give
this.
you a quick background here. When Richard Dawkins wrote The God Delusion back about 2 decades ago, one of the points he made, and I think it's a legit point, is he pointed out you would never, I'm paraphrasing, you would never call a child a Republican or a Democrat. You would never say this person's a fiscal conservative. He's 5.
Right.
You know, you would never say that because the kids aren't old enough to make sense of any of that. We ought to allow them to choose their own path, and the same thing should apply to religion. No child is Christian or Jewish or Muslim.
Which is fair.
That was
Feels
the argument they
a
made.
little precious to me. Of like, as long no, I get it, I understand, but also I'm not sure how that's a helpful argument to be made.
His argument was there was kids,
right,
because their parents were Muslim or Christian. The kids were labeled that way as well, and he's like, come on, those kids aren't in any meaningful way Christian, Muslim, whatever. Don't call them that because you're putting your label on them. I think that's a legit point. But here's okay, whatever. Different debate for another time. Here's our friend Dave Silverman now chiming in. I'm just going to read the first half of this tweet.
He's just riffing off something Richard Dawkins said 2 decades ago.
He's riffing off of a tweet that said, "No child is trans." That's the whole tweet. No child is trans. There's one of those right-wing people.
I'm a little nervous.
And he quote tweets it because he has more to say. And the thing he says is, no child is trans. No child is gay. No child is Christian, Jew, Muslim, or Hindu. No child is Republican or Democrat, et cetera, et cetera. He's using that Dawkins logic from the God Delusion, where you don't foist a label on kids, to argue that children are not trans or gay. And I'm just putting it out there. I know plenty of children, or I know plenty of gay people and trans people. And if you ask them, when did you know you were gay or trans? The answer is
I've
something in the child, like under 18 is the answer. I do not, I do know, because I'm surrounded by these people on social media. I get why they're anti-trans, and I think their arguments are stupid.
Right.
I do not get this argument that says children aren't gay. Like, when do you think the switch goes off at like 18? What are you talking about? Have you never talked to an LGBTQ person?
Right.
I know he has.
Yeah.
I know he's been I know he's worked with them. I know he knows them now. This is performative stupidity at this point, because he's not even arguing, and I think it's a stupid argument, but like, no child should ever be allowed to go through hormone therapy or whatever the Atlantic is writing now. It's a separate argument, and I think that's dumb too. That's the J.K. Rowling stance. He's not even playing that game. He's not doing the Megan Phelps-Roper game. He's doing this one of like, no, you're not gay, you're not trans. When do you think they are?
I think also I want to...
How did he go that far down the rabbit hole, not trail, and go here where, like...
No, this is when intellectual dishonesty really comes back around. Because the other thing, on top of all of the things that you just said, which were all correct, so what? I guess that's when I see things like that.
Like, why is he writing this at all?
Not even why you're writing this, but like, no child is trans. It's just a nonsense statement. It doesn't mean anything meaningful. Like, it sounds like it means something, but it doesn't. And I guess that's the same way, like, no child is Christian. I mean, I guess
there are some who are,
but I see
there
what you
are some who
mean.
are. There's a difference between 4-year-olds or 16-year-olds who have like thought about it and whatever. I'm not arguing against the 16-year-old. I think there's a valid point about like the 3-year-old isn't a Christian. The 3-year-old doesn't know any of this stuff. So yeah, don't put a label on the kid. I get that. No one is saying, oh, I have a child. My child is 3 years old. My child is trans. No one's doing that.
No, they are definitely tilting at windmills all of the time at this point, because you can see now they've refocused all of their energy against this trans thing, which is so wild and so short-sighted. But truly, like, and maybe there is something rhetorical that's magical about this that I'm missing, but this no child is trans, no child is Christian. It's just empty rhetoric. It doesn't mean anything. No child is okay.
Not only
but
are you
adults
saying...
are, so I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with this information. Right. I don't want to shock Dave Silverman, but every adult was a child at some point. Yeah. So to say no child is trans is technically untrue, because if I am an adult who is trans, that means as a child I was trans also, because that's just... My identity has always been this
Even
person.
if I didn't understand it, I'm with you.
It's just fucking pointless. And
the level of stupid shit he says to appeal to right-wing conservatives right now.
Fucking gross. Hey, Dave, it's me, Jess. Do you remember we hung out one time in, where was that? Vegas.
It was
Vegas.
hell.
And we hung out and you were really nice and we talked to John Doerr about comedy and it was great. What the fuck have you done to yourself, sir? What are you fucking doing? You are so angry that people have moved to the left of you, which is a good thing. Being more accepting of a larger group of people is necessarily a good thing, because it's the fucking opposite of what the Republicans are doing, which is narrowcasting as much as they can. So this sort of trying to fit in with like the cool guys and the Joe Rogans and like, I'm going to say something really outlandish and it's going to get me clicks. And then I'll be like, haha, I enraged the liberals. Mission accomplished. LOL. Like, my dude, who are you trying to help? Because you are helping fucking nobody.
Would you like me to slow clap? I will.
I just checked.
I agree, though.
I'm so mad at him. Like, I genuinely, this is the only time I have, and we didn't have any kind of close, I do not think he actually remembers me. But truly, like, this is the only time that something like this has happened that, like, I thought we were, like, on the same page for things. And it's like, wait, have you been a monster this whole time? And people ask why I don't trust men.
I've had
I do
conversations.
this shit all the time. I'm waiting for you, Hammond. Jesus, Lord knows I'm not
Give
thinking.
me a week. I've talked to reporters who had the same question. Like, I interviewed him for so many things. He was perfectly pleasant. What happened? I'm like, long story. Sit down.
It's genuinely
drink.
very sad
Yeah.
to me. No, buy me a drink. Hammond doesn't talk. Anyway.
All right, different story. This one has an amusing ending for you. Okay, here's the backstory here. There are some public schools in the country where they'll have this thing basically called like church release time, and it's legal and it's weird. But basically, these are special programs where the school allows kids to skip like 45 minutes a week of school
To go to church?
to go to church. And the school has nothing to do with it. They basically say, if you skip school for 45 minutes during this window, we'll allow it without penalty. And then the church is responsible for transportation and getting the kids to a different building and teaching them the lesson and then bringing them back to school and all that stuff.
Okay, so it's not just like for 45 minutes, kids can do whatever the fuck they
No,
want under
no.
the guise of we're going to church.
No.
Okay, so it's like
There's
a
Sun-
coordinated
it's-
event.
It's Sunday school, but in the middle of the school week.
And is it every day or is it?
It
Once a
depends on
week.
the program.
Okay.
It could be once a week. But like obviously you could tell why this might be a bad thing because
Sure.
if you're leaving the same class every week, you might be missing a fifth of
same
your
class
Yeah. You're
every
missing math
day.
every time or something. I don't know. It depends on the program. In 2020, Tennessee, for example, required public schools to allow these programs to exist. But if it went through, if a district said, yeah, we're going to do it, kids could have skipped 180 hours per year. That's
Wow.
22.5 full days of instruction gone
Wow.
if they went through with it. And again, I would also argue the whole program is unnecessary because you can do Sunday school. And
Yeah.
churches have other ways to indoctrinate kids.
School
Why do you
is
need to do
out
it
at
then?
3:00. That gives
I mean,
you.
yeah, you could do so many things.
Yeah.
I will say in
If
Tennessee,
it's me, 12 hours of the rest of your day.
in Tennessee, when they said we were going to allow this, our friends at the Satanic Temple, they proposed a program in Knoxville, Tennessee called the Satanic Children's Ministry of Tennessee, and they made headlines for this a few years ago.
Fun.
But, okay, that's your backdrop, okay? In Ohio, last summer, there were 2 school districts in Ohio that said they were doing something like this. There was a Christian ministry called LifeWise Academy. They offered to offer religious instruction to kids in grades 2 through 4.
LifeWise?
Whatever. They all have dumb names.
Random name
But
generators.
they said if you're in grades 2, 3, or 4, like those are the kids we want to allow.
Young.
Yeah.
I was thinking
Oh, yeah.
high schoolers.
No. You got to get them young.
Oh, Jesus.
Very young. So,
Fuck.
but
Okay.
basically, the way the district said, how can we allow this to happen, is they said, well, you can't go during like mandatory classes. We will allow you to go during elective periods, which is a problem too, because now they could skip art or music.
Yeah,
because they don't
Lord
think
knows
it's mandatory.
nobody's ever been enriched by music.
Yeah. Or they could skip lunch and have lunch with the church. And if the church provides that, then the kids are getting fed. So whatever. So whatever. That's how they justified it. And again, this is important. The district already allowed parents to take their kids out of school during non-academic periods for other reasons. They had a policy in place, like if you want to take your kid to an appointment or something.
Oh, okay.
No harm, no foul, as long as you go through the process. So they basically said, well, if the church wants to take your kids and the parents give you permission to do it, we can't stop you from doing it. So fine, I guess. Like there's no formal agreement between the districts and the church.
Right.
They're not endorsing any of it. They're saying, well, I guess if the parents allow it and the church wants to take you, we can't stop you. That's
Seems like a
basically their idea.
Huge liability for the school, though, to
Again.
ship your kids off campus.
Right.
Like,
There's a bunch of bad ideas, but legally speaking, it doesn't look like they were doing anything illegal. If you're the school district, they were
maybe
playing within the
unwise.
rules. Maybe unwise, but it's nothing illegal. So, by the way, I should say the Christian ministry asked one of those school boards for a resolution to recognize their church and the ministry doing this, and they, for whatever reason, they didn't end up doing it.
Okay.
I think because the school district said, well, we already allow parents to do it. This falls within that,
redundant.
so we don't need to add more paperwork to the whole process. And here's the other thing. The ministry did try to make a pitch for why they were doing this, why they wanted to do this, whether or not they needed permission. And they said, look, on a budget of about $19,000, we could pay for 2 teachers. We could reach kids. We could present the gospel. Again, District doesn't care about any of this. This is not a thing they need to sign off on.
Okay.
My point here is the ministry said, we have a plan in place to make this a worthwhile investment of time for the parents and the kids who participate. And the district said, well, we can't stop you. Okay, that's the backstory here.
Okay.
I think it's a horrible idea for other reasons, but I don't think the district did anything illegal.
No.
Unwise, like you said, yes. But like none of the church-state separation groups went after the district for doing this. I think probably because they also saw like, well, there's nothing the district is doing that's
right.
illegal. Okay.
It's not necessarily it's a tacit endorsement, but it's not a full-throated endorsement.
So
right?
last week I see a strange article. Well, it caught my attention. This is in a local newspaper in Ohio. It's called the Logan Daily News. It's a small town newspaper, fine. But the headline is this: school district asked to balance Bible classes with atheist teaching. And I'm like, oh, interesting. I guess some atheist group or something must have said, we want to do the same thing. Kind of like the Satanic Temple did. And I'm like, okay, I'm here for this. Tell me what you're trying to do. And then I read this thing and I'm like, oh, no.
What?
Okay, here's the thing that they said in this article. I'll read you one paragraph. Now, a group calling itself American Secularists is arguing that what's good for the Christian goose is good for the atheist gander. Nice.
I wish you could see the gestures Hammett does when he does his annoying person voice. It's a lot of like waggling of fingers.
Their Dayton-based Ohio chapter has approached school districts.
Dating-based?
Dayton, Ohio.
Oh,
Their
Dayton.
Dayton-based Ohio chapter has approached school districts, including the one in the area where LifeWise Academy already is teaching classes, with a request to be granted equal access to provide students with a, quote, atheist science release time curriculum.
Sure.
Okay, so I get the game that is being played here. You're allowing Christians to do this thing.
Right.
We want to be able to do it as well.
Right.
Here's where things get weird.
Okay.
American Secularists is the name of the group. You've
is
never
not
heard of it.
Something I've ever heard of.
You know why you haven't
Have I heard any person who is secular call himself a secularist?
Do you know why you haven't heard of the group American Secularists?
Because it's a sock puppet account.
Because it doesn't exist. I looked into it. It does not exist.
Wow.
The newspaper said their Dayton-based Ohio chapter, guess how many chapters there are?
0.
0. So there's no local chapter because there are no chapters. It's just a dude.
Wait.
It's a
So they're
dude.
saying local chapter of this
group that doesn't
secular
exist.
and did no further research.
They didn't know for the and again, local. I'm not expecting them to do the research. They're just reporting whatever this guy's complaining about.
No.
But
Let's not condescend to good-hearted Midwestern journalists.
Fine.
They should be held to the same standards.
They should have pointed out there is no group here. But
Yeah.
they did mention
that's
the
literally
persons.
called journalism.
It also, they said the Dayton-based Ohio chapter has approached school districts, plural, including the one in our area. I can't find any proof they approached any other school district except for one.
Okay.
So that's weird too. But the guy...
See, this is journalism that you're doing. That's journalism, not whatever those
I don't
dorks were
appreciate
doing.
the big quote hands you did while you said that.
Yep.
You thought about him. But the guy, they did quote, who's the person who's doing all this? His name is Louis Wood. Fine. Okay, so I looked up this guy.
Lewis. I was just seeing if it was
So-
like an IP Freely situation.
No. I mean, that's his name. But basically, according to the newspaper, Wood shared a communication he sent to the school district where he said, quote, like that he wanted to do this program. He said he would, his program would be provided, quote, he sent this to the district, right outside your school in a mobile teaching facility, privately funded by my organization and others who are on board to make it happen. It will also be funded by generous donors. He also said that the teaching staff for his program, quote, will include paid and volunteer science teachers with college educations, teaching certificates, and will have no criminal backgrounds whatsoever, basically saying he's going to do a background check on everyone involved.
And is there any evidence that any of the groundwork has been done to do this thing?
So I asked him. And I'm like, buddy.
Bless your heart, Hammett. Oh my God. Most
'Cause-
millennials are afraid to make phone calls, not Hammett.
Oh, there was a phone call too. We'll get to that.
I'm so excited.
So I did message. I did reach out to this guy. Basically, my thing is, like, listen, I cover this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I've never heard of your group.
No.
That doesn't mean you don't exist. Maybe you were off my radar. Bad on me. But I don't know you, and I would like to know who you are.
Yeah.
And also, where are you getting this funding that is funded by generous donors? Like, listen,
Got like a
I know
mobile classroom and he's going to drive around
Yeah.
Ohio. I love this
I'm
guy's
like, listen,
dreams.
I don't know every atheist, but as king of all atheists, I have an idea of who the big donors are who give money to the large atheist groups in this country.
Am I your Rasputin or your
Yes.
jester?
Yes. And I'm like, who
I have
are
a
these?
famously big penis. What?
I mean, if you, who are these generous donors who are giving to you for this interesting
You
cause? You
personally.
personally, that like, because I haven't heard anyone announcing this, and I feel like
and
if
he
anyone's
hasn't
giving
called
a lot
out
of money,
specific sponsorships.
did not. I'm like, that's just, it's weird that it's escaped my radar because I look out for this stuff. Weird.
I'm
and
having
also,
so much fun right now.
so I asked him all this stuff, and honestly, the conversation was really, I have questions about all this stuff I read. Can we chat on the phone? And we chatted on the phone. It was a 20-minute phone call.
Is that a long or a short time?
For me, that's a long phone
Okay.
call because the phone call should be 10 seconds long, and it's like, hey, are we doing that thing? Yeah, cool, bye.
We've been talking for 85 minutes.
Yeah. 20-minute phone call. And basically, it started out. I don't think he knows who I am, which is fine, but he looked me up as soon as I messaged him. And so, right off the bat, for the first minute, he flattered me. Basically, like, yeah, I really appreciate all the work you're doing. I really like your website. And I think he mentioned the podcast, and I'm thinking in my head, you haven't heard any. You
Truly,
don't know me.
Hemant is the one person in the world who, if somebody tried to get on his good side by flattering him, they've already fucked up. Right? Like the second anybody
As
would come
every
up to you
person who
and be
listens
like,
to this show knows, the
Yeah.
way you get on my good side is just insulting me right off the bat.
or insulting me to you, which is probably better.
So it's like, okay, fine, you don't. But he's
Yeah,
saying
this
nice
is not the way
things
to get a Heaven's
about
good
me.
side.
But okay, fine. I appreciate
Anything
that
about
you
me?
appreciate. I think he was referring to the articles.
But
and
did he say my
maybe
name?
he
Is he a
mentioned-
big
no.
fan of me personally?
He maybe touched
How
on
is this
that.
about
I
me?
don't know. But he's like, I appreciate your articles and all that. I'm like, well, thanks, fine. Well, I have questions for you because basically
You see what
within
I
a
do
couple
now?
minutes, I'm like, listen, I think at some point I must have said this.
Did you record that?
No. But I was like, I think all of this is bullshit. Can you just like, do you have an organization? Because I looked for it and I'm not finding any there's no website.
Can you give me a better
There's nothing.
phrasing that you
No, I
actually
said,
used?
I think this is bullshit.
Did
And-
you
yeah.
really?
And
Good
I'm
for
like,
you.
can you tell me this is not bullshit? Like, who are your donors? Do you have any
give me
money?
any
Give
evidence
me
this is
anything.
real.
And over the course of 20 minutes,
Okay. Which is
he
a long
got
time.
more and more frustrated that I was asking him any of this stuff. And basically, what it boiled down to was, have you asked the Christian ministry what their budget is, who their donors are? And I'm like, one, no, because I'm on the phone with you.
Yeah.
Two, I don't care. I already know they have money because I already looked at articles about them.
We can
And-
trace that money.
And also, they have like 6 churches on board with this program. I know those churches have money, and it doesn't matter. They're
Exactly.
already doing it.
And they're probably
doing
leaving
the
some kind of
program.
paper trail. Like, we can figure this shit out,
Yeah,
sir.
But also, I'm not asking you a hard question
Right.
here. I don't need
this
the
isn't
name.
gotcha journalism.
I don't need the name of your donor if you don't want to give it to me.
Right.
But do you have money for this? Do you have a curriculum?
Yeah.
What are you going forward with?
A
here?
curriculum is such a good question.
And basically, all I got from him, because he wasn't answering anything, he basically said, look, the ministry started from scratch, so I can start from scratch.
Nobody's saying you can't. We're
Right.
just trying to establish, like, if you're a nonprofit,
And
we
he's
need-
not.
He's not anything.
I
He's
mean,
just
I
a
didn't
dude.
find evidence of a nonprofit. But basically, and also to his point of like, have you asked the church any of this? Well, I don't need to because they're already effing doing it.
Yeah.
I know that. That's what this whole argument is about. They're doing it. And now you want to play the equal access
They've
card,
shown-
which I appreciate, but also they've done the shit.
They've
And
shown
if-
me they can pull this off.
Yes,
You have
and
not.
you have not. All I know about you, based on this article in the local paper, is that you've said you want to do this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and you said you have money, and you're demanding the sort of access they have.
Right.
But I don't think you have any of this stuff. And if you're threatening the district, or basically saying, "I want to do it, so you got to let me,"
Right.
and you don't have any of this in place, I don't like your MO here
And why?
of how you're going about doing this.
Yeah, and why would
So-
we listen to you? All that stuff.
Then I said, well, okay, if you're not answering any of my questions, it looks like from the local paper, they said they had seen a copy of the communication that you sent to the school district. Maybe there was an email to the superintendent. Can you just forward me the email you sent so I know what you sent instead of what the newspaper quoted you as
Unlike
saying,
Christians, we like evidence.
I mean, like, you already sent the email. It's public. I could FOIA this if I wanted to because
Sure.
it's a public record.
Don't make me FOIA it,
but
please.
I'm on the phone with you. Can you just forward me? Like, that's 2 clicks.
Yeah.
Like, just
Be
do the
chill
thing.
for once, dude.
He would not. So here's what I gathered.
Under any particular guise?
No,
just would. So is he talking in circles at this point, or is he like
He's
trying
just-
to make a point?
He's getting louder and louder, and he's getting angrier with me for asking these basic questions.
Okay, that does sound like
And
me.
my takeaway was you don't have anything in place to run a program that is a secular alternative to the church program. But here's the interesting part of me was like, if this is the way you're talking to me,
Right.
and I'm on your side in principle here,
Yeah.
like,
The
what the
stakes couldn't have been lower, and he's lost his shit on it.
What were you like with the superintendent? And guess what? I have an answer to that.
Not great.
Because the newspaper did speak with the superintendent of the district. And get this, because I looked at this while I'm talking to him on the phone. I'm like, what did they say about the superintendent? Wood reported that a phone conversation he had with the school district superintendent, Monty Baincher is the name of the superintendent. He reported that the phone conversation he had with the superintendent didn't go well, with Baincher, the superintendent, eventually hanging up on him. Baincher said to the paper, he ended the call with Wood because he kept screaming and yelling. And I'm like, oh, that's why I'm about to hang
Remember
up
that?
on you.
That sounds right.
And I had to hang up on this guy too because he kept
Wait,
getting.
did you really?
Yeah, because he kept
You
getting
buried the
belligerent with
lead
me.
there.
Yeah, and then I will show you this later privately. I have so many Facebook messages from this guy with no responses from me. He was
Hannah,
so
he's gonna
mad.
murder you.
He is. No, like that's
Take Daddy home.
no. I'm just looking at this, and I like periodically when he says things, he went from "I'm angry, you're very he said, "Oh, I'll quote this. I'll quote this." He said, "Hanging up on me something was very quote unprofessional." And then, quote, "You will not get anything from me. I don't care if you have photos of yourself with Bill Nye and look." I'm not done. I'm not done. I don't care if you have photos of yourself with Bill Nye and look pretty on Fox News. The Bill Nye picture is from the Reason Rally in 2012. And I think the one or two times I was on Fox News, the last of which was probably 2012 or 2013.
gonna
It's been a long
say.
time. But thank you for calling me pretty.
Oh my God, nobody's called you pretty
know,
on
right?
the air before.
But then after that, he sends a lot of angry messages that I don't respond to. Then he sends something like, "I deserve the right to be able to do this," or whatever, which is the equal access argument to I think I gave him a thumbs up, which probably infuriated him more. But this goes on for a while, and at some point I think I may have blocked him or something because I'm like, I don't have to put up with this.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Stops being fun at some point.
yeah, the takeaway for me is you're going to them with this plan. And here's the kicker. I don't think, and this is what I took away from the superintendent's comments too, because I looked this up. Here's what the superintendent said to the newspaper. I'm going to paraphrase it first. His paraphrase is, he doesn't need my permission to do any of this because the church didn't need permission to do any of this. There's no formal agreement with them. We already allow parents to remove their kids from non-academic classes. So we're allowing the church to do it. And by the way, that applies to this guy too. Here's what he actually said, superintendent. If American secularists were to offer the program they've proposed during lunch, quote, and a parent wanted to sign their child out to go to that, then that would be a parent's right to sign their child out to go to that. He added, however, superintendent, you know very well that's not going to happen here, which I thought was a dickish thing to say, but okay, fair
Not
point.
an untrue dickish
Not
thing
an
to
untrue
say.
thing. But his point is, he can do it. He can launch his program. No one is stopping him. Which, if you were going to post a threat, like if you allowed them to do it, like those after-school Satan clubs, you already allowed the Christian clubs to meet. Well, we are applying for the same access.
Yeah.
You would at least try to figure out what were the hoops they had to jump through, the paperwork they had to fill out, and then we're going to do the same thing and let you say no to us, because then we can fight. Then we can have a lawsuit. This guy apparently did none of the homework. Because basically, even after yelling at the superintendent...
And that didn't work.
And it didn't work.
Weird.
And the superintendent's like, no one's stopping him. He can do it.
On Community, there's
the superintendent's like, I don't know what you need from me. I don't know why you're yelling.
No, truly, there's an episode of Community in the first or second season that Britta is screaming about some oil spill and how bad it is. And some dude on campus is just like, you do not need to yell at us. Nobody is on the other side of this issue. And that's what this guy feels like to me. Like, okay, like I feel that you're mad and you just want to be mad, but I just need you to know, sir, you're your own worst enemy.
Yeah.
here.
And then he also told the newspaper, I'm quoting the newspaper, Wood made no secret of the fact that his group's preferred outcome is to get schools to drop the LifeWise program. Fine. I'm with you. I wish they would too. But, quote, he said his program is fully equipped and prepared to start offering its atheist/science curriculum next school year if any districts take up the offer.
Why you gotta
Again,
lie?
Districts are not stopping him. You can do it. They have now called your bluff because they're all saying, yeah, buddy, go ahead and do it. If you have parents in line who are eager to send their kids to
Yeah.
your mobile, generously funded,
Atheist
donor-sponsored
science
thing,
death van.
have at it. They've called his bluff.
Yeah.
I would love to know if he has a curriculum. I don't know that he does.
This
But
is
anyway, I would love to ask him myself, but I think I'm done talking to him, and I don't think he has any answers for me.
This is truly one of the more bizarre stories
It was
that
so
we've.
much fun.
It's just so.
I just wanted a simple answer.
Boy, it's on our side too.
I had
huh?
a fun weekend.
Yeah, man, that's fucking buck wild. I love this
Right?
story.
And by the way, a follow-up on that one, not on the same story, but about after-school Satan Club meetings. You may recall, we talked about this before, that a couple months ago in Pennsylvania, there's the Saucon Valley School District, and they have a Christian Good News Club that meets at like the elementary school.
Meet me at the flagpole.
And the after-school Satan Club said, well, we want to meet. They, unlike this Ohio guy, they did the research. They went to the school board. They had everything in place to go. But and the school board said initially, yeah, that's fine. We're giving you the same access. We're not going to stop you. No lawsuits here. Like, go ahead and do it.
Right.
And they were about to launch their first meeting on March 8th of this year, 2 months ago. But on the Tuesday, a couple weeks prior, after the school board said, yeah, have at it, but before they had the first meeting, someone left the district a voicemail basically threatening to cause harm if the Satanists were allowed to meet. Anonymous phone call, anonymous threat. District officials were worried. So on that Tuesday, they canceled all after-school activities. And then
across the board?
Across the board. And they also canceled all classes and activities the next day. Clearly disruptive, but also they were trying to be cautious.
Yeah.
They did the right thing, I guess, if they thought this was a valid threat. And they called the police and all that. Okay, so all that is frustrating and disappointing. But then here's what's weird. On Wednesday, like the day after, the day everything was closed, the superintendent of the district said the district would review the Satan clubs, she called it the Satan clubs, Satan clubs' use of our facility,
That's right.
right? And it's like, why? They didn't have anything, they didn't call the threat. They
Right.
just exist.
And
So
they're
what are you
very
mad
willing
about?
to cave over threats
Yeah, right? Like,
to
so,
not protect your students.
and
Good job.
they completed their review in like 2 days, and the superintendent said she has rescinded approval for the after-school Satan Club
Fuck.
from using the district's facilities for violating district policy.
What?
And she said at the time, our community has experienced chaos. Our students, staff, and teachers have had to endure a threat to their safety and welfare. The gravity of feelings of instability, anxiety, and fear have been profound. Basically, this is a danger to everybody.
So you're just going to fold to bullies,
gonna
and
fold.
that's sort of the lesson we're going to teach
and
our
that was
children.
very frustrating. And what we said at the time is,
Motherfuckers.
you just did some. I mean, besides a really dumb move on your part,
Yeah.
this has an unintended consequence. Because if this district is allowed to get away with it, what they created right there was a playbook for other assumed Christian terrorists to follow anytime there was an atheist or satanic club meeting at a local school. Call in a threat, mention them as the reason you're calling in the threat, watch chaos unfold, right?
and the victims be blamed for it.
Yeah, and the school district could easily have said at the same time, look, we're working with law enforcement to ensure safety of everybody. Extra security will be provided anytime students gather for a perfectly legal meeting of the after-school Satan Club. But instead, they banned the Satan Club, after-school Satan Club, from meeting. So they tried talking about this. The after-school Satan people, the Satanic Temple, were like, this is a dumb move on your part. Don't do
Yeah.
it. School district did not
Waving them
listen.
off.
March 31st, the ACLU filed a lawsuit against the school district saying, what you just did is illegal. You can't do that. And basically, there was a lot of details involved in this case. Things like the school district said the Satanic Temple advertised their meetings, but they didn't include a disclaimer that said the club wasn't sponsored by the school district, which, one, they did, and two, the Christian club did not,
Of
which
course.
is interesting. Like a lot of really nitty-gritty details
Like
that were
red
done.
tape bullshit
Yeah,
that they're.
but
yeah.
basically the ACLU said, look, the bottom line is what you are doing is illegal. You cannot blame the Satanic Temple for what happened with any of this. And they pointed out the hypocrisy of all this stuff. Here's the
course.
good news. This week, a U.S. district judge basically said, hey, school district, you got to let the Satanic Club meet,
Good.
overturning their stupid decision. He does add, there were some qualifications there, but the judge said the district must permit the after-school Satan Club to meet at the location and on the dates upon which the parties already agreed during the current school year. And basically he said, this is the first line in the decision. When confronted with a challenge to free speech, the government's first instinct must be to forward expression rather than quash it,
Yes!
particularly when the content is controversial or inconvenient.
Oh my
Nothing less is consistent with the express purpose of American government to secure the core innate rights of its people.
Oh my
Great.
God, I forgot that people in authority could be reasonable. Oh, it was so
Right?
beautiful to listen to.
So as of now, that means the original 2 remaining dates of After School Satan Club, or at least the 1 remaining date, May 10th,
Yeah, I
they
mean-
will be meeting. They have advertised it. They did issue a very clear disclaimer. The district has nothing to do with this. And we'll see what happens.
So
I should
brave,
say,
this
I forgot
district.
to mention this. We talked about this before too. But the guy who made the threatening phone call was caught. He was arrested. And that's a separate story. He had nothing to do with anything. He just is crazy. Like, he's a Christian extremist. What else is there to say? But good, happy ending to this story. The Satanic Temple will be allowed to meet, and we'll see how much the school district has to pay up for this idiotic thing. There's a couple other quick ones I wanted to get through before we finish up today.
not done?
We're not done. This was important, and I didn't want it to wait till next week.
Okay.
On Saturday, there was an interview with CNN's Jim Acosta, and he interviewed Representative Tim Burchett, who is a Republican congressman from Tennessee. And basically, this guy made headlines a month or 2 ago. There was that awful mass shooting at a Christian school in Nashville. And shortly after that happened, people stopped this guy, a Republican in Congress, and they're like, well, what can we do about this? And he said, we're not going to fix it. Like, just dismissed
Was
it.
he the one who said, like, a few deaths is the price for the Second Amendment or something like that?
You know what? I don't have it in front of me, but he very well may have gone
Okay,
down that
I'll see if I
route.
can find
But he
that.
very literally said, we're not going to fix it.
Cool.
Like, he's not going to do anything. And but this is the same guy who voted against expanding background checks for gun sales in
I mean,
2021.
you didn't have to tell us that. We knew.
Right? Exactly. So, now, and also in March, he also alluded to a need for more Jesus in the nation.
Obviously.
He said, and I'm quoting, I think you've got to change people's hearts. You know, as a Christian, as we talk about in the church, and I've said this many times, I think we really need a revival in this country.
Cool.
So that's what he said in March. So now this guy's on CNN again. Why? Because last week, that shooter in Texas massacred 5 innocent people who asked him to keep quiet at night. So CNN invited this guy to talk. So Jim Acosta asked him, why would you enter politics and then refuse to take action to prevent tragedies like these? And CNN played the clip of what he said a couple months ago, where he said we need a revival in this country, where he's said, like, there's nothing else to do.
Even though the most Christian states in our country have the worst life expectancy,
we'll get there.
worst health,
Oh, yeah.
worst health outcomes, worst education, lowest like life expectancy, like
All the metrics are bad for us.
for Christian, it's
Here's what he
so
said
astounding.
to CNN. Like, Jim Acosta asked, why not fix this? Get together with the Democrats and get it done. Burchett says, and after they play the clip of him saying, we need a revival, Burchett says, I was probably speaking more from a Christian perspective. I also went on after that clip where I said I can't get anything done and said, we need real revival in this country. I feel like we've turned from the Lord. And I know that maybe makes people's heads spin off sometimes when they hear somebody like me say that, but then CNN's Acosta says, well, there is Christianity in other countries and they don't have mass shootings.
And
Burchett says, well, they don't have our freedom either. They don't have a Second Amendment. To which,
and this is why everybody's leaving the country.
I know.
Because what they do, they don't have a Second Amendment, but they do have universal health care.
first of all, saying they don't have a Second Amendment sounds like a pretty damn good case for getting rid of the Second Amendment.
Truly, like Oh my God,
Like-
yes. I'm sorry. I completely came down on a weird side of that. So he knows the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Like, amend it. And also, what they don't have our freedom. England, France, Germany, they are free.
What does
They
that
are
mean?
free.
That's
What
always
do you
what
wanna-
I wonder. What I wonder. What does that mean to them to say we are freer?
And in those
than
nations,
somebody in the UK.
in those nations where they have a national religion, the proportion of Christians is much higher in the United States than those
Oh,
other
of course.
countries. We are no less free. We are more Christian. The difference is that our conservatives love deadly weapons more than people's lives. And these people want to make sure that every American has a better chance of getting gunned down in the future. There have been gun massacres. I know I've said this, but there have been gun massacres in Christian schools, churches, synagogues, mosques. Those places were not lacking in faith. Some of them had armed officers. None of them could stop someone with an AR-15 and a grudge. And by the way, if you're talking about gun ownership, self-reported gun ownership numbers, who is most likely to
Christians.
either own a gun?
Christians.
Which Christians? Own a gun
Conservative
or have someone in their household who owns a gun. White evangelicals, 54% of them either own a gun or know someone who owns a gun, followed by Mormons at 52%. At the bottom of the list,
Wait, Mormons at 52%.
Mormons are at 50. I mean, I guess,
I guess
if
that
you live
tracks.
in
They're a
Utah,
little
and-
more like wildernessy,
Right.
frontierish vibes.
I assume Utah is Mormons and moose. Like that's it. Atheists, by the way, do you know what the number for atheists is? What percent of atheists either own a gun or
guns?
know someone in their house who owns a gun?
10%?
30. I was shocked.
Really?
These are self-reported numbers, so take that with a grain of salt. But 30%,
Do you think people overreport or underreport?
I don't know. The lowest number on the
way you
list,
said
I have no idea. The
self-reported.
lowest number on the list, 8% for who?
Buddhists.
Hindus.
Jains. Damn it.
Hindus. Buddhists were at 32. I don't understand any of these numbers.
That's not what the Buddha was
Anyway,
into.
the point is, Burchett isn't just wrong, he's backwards. Our gun problem is not the result of a lack of revival, because if we had more revival, it would probably hit evangelical Christians more than most, and they love their guns. So we would see more gun violence.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what the hell is he talking about?
First of all,
And there's one more thing I had to point out. One
on this story or a different story? Because I
Different
have a
story.
thing about this story.
Oh, go for it.
The quote I was trying to pull up in my brain, Charlie Kirk, who said, quote, "You'll never live in a society when you have armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That's nonsense. It's drivel, but I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have the cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That's a prudent deal. It is rational. Nobody talks like this. They live in a complete alternate universe." Is Charlie Kirk my age?
he's younger than you.
Why?
And he looks 20 years older
But
than
he's
you.
Falkirk, right? That's him?
That was him.
How did he get so much clout so young? He's an idiot.
He knew how the game works, which is if you go after marginalized people and you sound confident and just project this demeanor of everything I say is right.
And like that
Ben
clean
Shapiro
cut
plays the same games.
wearing guy, you can trust
you have
me.
to wear a suit at
Gotta
all
wear a
times.
suit.
Bow tie helps.
Yeah.
If you do that, you can get anything you want. Anyway, one last story for you. This one is quick.
It's a long episode.
This week in Ohio, Republicans in their state legislature
we were
are
just
debating.
in Ohio. Are you confused?
Yes. Again in Ohio, are debating a bill that would basically ban gender-affirming care for trans children because, hey, Dave, trans children exist.
Hey, Dave, go fuck yourself. It's me, Jess, again. Still mad at you.
Okay. So there was a debate during one of the subcommittees, and a guy named Stuart Long came to the Capitol to speak up in defense of this anti-trans bill.
Opposite of Stuart Little.
I was looking at his picture, and I make no comments. But anyway, he has a very Joshua Feuerstein vibe to him. Anyway, he just spoke here, and one of the things he said is he didn't have this set speech in mind of why we should block trans people from having gender-affirming care.
Okay.
So he just started talking. That's what I could get.
Sure.
But here's what he said. Everybody's after identity right now. And when they can confuse your identity, they can control this country. ... The only thing that makes sense for what's going on in this country is that demons are influencing people, allowing their bodies to be possessed to run satanic agendas that are out here running. So if nobody's going to say it, I sure will. That's what's going on in this country. And if you can't say Jesus Christ is come in the flesh, I'm quoting, your body is possessed most likely by demons, or you haven't invited him in. So,
What is he talking about again?
don't know. But one of the Democrats in the Ohio State House, a Democratic state rep, Beth Liston, she basically singled out one of the points he made, which is if you can't say Jesus Christ is God, you're possessed by demons. She picked up on that line and she's like, hang on just a second.
Honestly, that's a fair one to grab onto.
Right? And she said, it was fast, but did you just, I'm not even joking, this is how she said, did you just call our Hindu, Muslim, and Jewish members demons? I heard you say if they did not have Jesus Christ in their heart. And then he cuts in, no, if you have the Holy Spirit inside you, there's a phrase you could say, Jesus Christ is come in the flesh. And if you are open to those
I really
other
wish he would
gods,
stop saying come
that's
in the
what
flesh.
he said. Don't
Come
blame
on,
me.
guys.
And then
grow up.
... He said, if you are open to those other gods, based on that faith, you are allowing other gods to possess your physical form. If you're not down with that, so to speak, if you're of another religion that's not of
Now
that,
he's talking to kids.
you're given access to non-godly entities to make your decisions, which is a very long, stupid way of saying, yeah, I called them demons. Or more technically speaking, that all non-Christians are enabling themselves to be taken over by demons. And then Liston, the Democrat, said, any opposition to this bill, I will strongly say, is not from possession by demons, which is hilarious and totally sidesteps the point. But man, that was wild. Even here's how bad this guy was.
Jesus.
The Republican sponsor of the bill, Gary Click, he later distanced himself from Long, and he's like, that was just an ignorant statement. I cannot emphasize enough how much I don't support those statements. Basically saying, listen, I'm doing this because I just hate trans people. Don't let that guy go on a tangent with demons. The answer
we
is
have a lot in common because we both hate trans people, but I am not.
I don't hate
kind
them because of the demons. I just hate them for who they are.
I just hate them because they scare me personally and make me maybe call into question my own gender and sexual identity, and that scares me because I'm an old man.
The Ohio House Democrats issued a statement later. When you promote extremist legislation, this is the extremist proponent testimony you're going to get. And one guy also added, as much as I would like to laugh this off, this kind of deranged bullying is all too common these days at the State House.
That's a very good point to make, that it's silly and it's easy to laugh at, but these guys.
The Republicans in the Ohio House, bottom line, would rather have this Christian nut dictating policy hurting trans kids than support trans kids who say gender-affirming care is life-saving and necessary in certain situations.
Yeah, but they're kids, so they're idiots. What do they know? Except for if they're Satanists. Wait, are they old enough to be... So 4-year-old old enough to be sexually active. A teenager is not old enough to decide if they are Christian or not.
Or gay.
Or trans. But they can decide to commit their life to Jesus Christ at the age of 13 if you're Catholic.
Or younger if you're at an evangelical Christian church.
Yeah.
I think the moral of today's episode is we know nothing about children, apparently.
Because they're either basically adults as soon as they're born.
Yes.
Or they are like mental infants until the day they turn 18.
Correct.
And
at which
until they turn 14, if they're a girl... Then they're like for marriage.
Then they're mature enough to have a child.
Of their
raise
own.
that child.
And they're really developed 14-year-old childbearing hips.
And the jobs they won't be able to pursue because they must be stay-at-home moms.
Yeah, no. Christianity sounds cool and great. I'm
don't know why the demographics are shifting.
Yeah, it's so
much.
weird.
All right.
Okay.
We have taken your time long enough.
How long was this episode?
7.5 hours, and I have shit to talk about in the bonus. I read a book.
What?
I have thoughts on Blueski.
What's Blueski?
It's the Twitter clone.
It's not Blue Sky?
No, the cool kids call it Blueski, and we all post skeets.
Oh, no. Okay, you can leave us a review on iTunes. Here's one. You guys to say a lot of really mean things about me personally. It hurts my feelings. Stop it.
I give you so much to work with.
One of
though.
the
Come
best
on.
and favorites from Fug
Where is
Cod.
Louis from Ohio leaving us a review? I'm sure he has tons of stuff to say about me now.
Apparently nowhere. I don't see Louis.
He said it to me over the phone.
Friendly
Leave me a
Atheist
review
is
while
one
you
of
do
the podcasts I've been most looking forward to every week and has been for a long time. I like how they cover news that affects non-religious folks and the misconduct of religious leaders and organizations. The best episodes are the one where both hosts bring topical content to the discussion. I'm sorry, I haven't been doing that lately. I have 2 other jobs. There is a separate, quote, bonus episode for their financial supporters. It contains the off-topic subjects of interest to the hosts. I feel good when I see it in my episode. Sorry. I feel good when I see it in my episode list, delete it, and then listen to the show.
Yes.
So they subscribe to our bonus episode. We're like, absolutely fucking not. I do not need to hear any more from y'all. Here's $5 a month anyway.
Listen,
that was an
you're the best sort of listener, and I appreciate
outstanding review, Fug Cod.
All right, we will
Great.
talk about many things soon.
Wait, before we go,
Yes.
really quick, do we know anybody who lives in Fargo? My husband and I are going to be there in like a month. Does
No.
anyone want to hang out? And also, RE, Gender Affirming Care for Young People, the latest episode of Sawbones with Dr. Sydney McElroy and Justin McElroy is all about gender affirming care for minors, and it is required listening for anybody who gives a shit about trans youth.
Excellent. Hey, Dave, go listen to it.
Dave, I'm still here and I'm still fucking mad. Go fuck yourself and then listen to Sawbones, not in that order.
And then go to patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast to support this show. You can send us an email. I'm not answering my phone. I know it's Dave. You can support the show. You can write us at friendlyatheistpodcast@gmail.com. Leave us messages. Go to
Yeah.
Discord. Go to Facebook.
We'll
many
talk to you in the
things.
bonus.
All right. See you
Bye.
soon.